Okay, so we are recording here. This will be for premiere, guys. This is the part 2 to the enhanced risk. So we do have an enhanced risk of severe weather today here. There's a big area of a marginal threat here in this area. And then the main threats are in this region here, and especially in this area shown in here. So the risks do include affected areas in the enhanced risk include Madison, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and Dubuque, Iowa, which I might be saying wrong. The slight risk affected areas are Charlotte, North Carolina, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Atlanta, Georgia, Greensboro, North Carolina, and Birmingham, Alabama today here. Those are some of the potential areas that will be affected by this risk. Here are also areas like Milwaukee, Davenport here, even Rochester, Eau Claire is on the slight risk here. La Crosse is also in the enhanced here, so there's many different areas that are in this risk today here. So persons here need to be very well aware of potential for strong tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail here, and significant hail. There's also a slight risk in these regions here for Charlotte, North Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. This goes to Montgomery, Birmingham, Atlanta, Tallahassee, Mobile. Those type of regions are all under the slight risk of severe weather today. The tornado threat is mostly only up here, so the slight risk down here doesn't need to be weather aware for tornadoes, but for winds. There is a 10% significant threat for large to significant up to violent possibly tornadoes in this 10% significant risk here. So persons here need to be very weather aware for potential for strong tornadoes today. This does include Madison, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Appleton, Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Dubuque, Iowa. And the 5% tornado risk is Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Rockford, Illinois, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Davenport, Iowa, and Rochester, Minnesota today here. Those are the potential areas in the risk. The wind threat is a 15% risk of wind down here. In affected areas including Tallahassee, Mobile, Montgomery, Birmingham, Atlanta, Columbia, Charlotte, and Roanoke here is under the wind risk today. There's also a 30% threat for wind in these areas, and then a significant threat for 70 miles an hour or more winds in this area, as a big line could form with the biggest wind threats. In my opinion, the biggest area that will probably get the strongest wind will probably be in this region right here near Green Bay and Milwaukee here. Will probably have the biggest threat for winds. The hail threat is a 30% significant threat in this region right here, including Green Bay, La Crosse, Madison, Dubuque, Appleton, Oshkosh, and many different areas. I know I do have some viewers in these risks here. This is a big hail risk of up to or even larger than baseball size hail here. So this is a pretty significant threat today. Tomorrow's threat is a day 2 slight risk of severe weather up here in these areas today. And there's also a separate marginal risk in these areas here. The affected areas tomorrow that need to be very well aware is Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, New York, Rochester, New York, and Akron, Ohio here. The tornado threat is a little lower, but there still is somewhat of a tornado threat up here and somewhat of a tornado threat up in this region. So persons here need to be weather aware for some tornado risk. There's also a wind risk and a hail risk tomorrow here. The day 3 outlook is just a marginal risk down in this region here. Now we are going to take a look at the models. Wait, first, since there is going to be a lot of buoyancy in this region. But there is some morning convection down here in this region. There is a little bit of morning convection here, and this probably could take down the risk of severe weather. Well, this could probably take out some of the ingredients in this region a little bit. But after this little line does go by, these storms, after this little morning convection comes by, the main event will form, and it'll be really strong, as there is just some very, 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 very moist and unstable air in these regions here. So yeah. Also, if we do look at COD satellite and radar, this is the satellite here. It's very cloudy in these regions here. But after this convection does go by, a cape will be maximizing here, and clearing will happen, and will make for some for a lot of buoyancy in these regions here, as clearing will start to happen here after this morning convection does go by. You can see that morning convection blowing up right there. Here. So the models, we're going to take a look at the models here. So around this time, I'm actually thinking this isn't the lower threat here. I'm thinking this storm could have tornado probabilities here, and some really very large hail with this. It's not a time where you really see a very large hail spike on the models like that. And there could be some more supercellular. They're not the most organized supercells by this time, but they will start to organize and mature more by the time they're in this region here. But I do think the greatest tornado threat will be right around here, will be when the greatest tornado threat does start here. I do think this supercell right here will have a very strong tornado potential. This one and all these supercells here could have a very strong threat for supercells. Also could be some renegade supercells up here producing tornadoes, and some more supercells up here ahead of this little line of supercells. Along this time, it does look to be a little more linear, but there's still a lot of supercells here in these regions. There's a big supercell right here, big one right here, another big one right there, another big one right there, another big one right there, and then maybe even some renegades in this region. So there could be some big time supercells today. And then by this point, the tornado threat does start to weaken a little bit as there's more of a linear mode, but there still is a tornado threat in this region, as there still are some supercells. But basically, this region right here is basically their tornado threat has lowered in this region. In the wind threat, this is my area of, I'm thinking the strongest winds will be right in this region, as there will be a big wind bag that will be heading into these regions here. And then by this point, everything's just wind. And the supercellular threat, the tornado threat, is a little weaker, but still could be some embedded tornadoes in this line here with this. So yeah, here. And this does stay a little more linear by this point. But I do think the biggest tornado potential was along this line and that line here. So yeah. Now, what we're going to do here, we're going to take a look at the dew points with this today. We're going to take a look at how strong these dew points are right now. So, if you look, by the time these storms form, there is some very, very high dew points in these areas. Anything above 60 degrees is enough here. These are up to 70s in these regions right here and over here. It's a little lower up here, but I do think there will still be a tornado threat over there. But this is just a lot of buoyant air here. And then by around this point, it gets very, very high in these regions here. Basically, all of this area of tornado threat does get to almost 70 degrees in these regions. This is a lot of moist air here to support these big-time storms. And then about this point, almost all of this area is in up to almost the low 70s here in this region here. So there's a lot of moist air to support these thunderstorms in these areas here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the lapse rates here. There's not very high lapse rates, but there are some of it here, but there's not the highest amount of lapse rates here. Now we're going to take a look at bulk shear. So we do have some pretty high bulk shear levels, some pretty high bulk shear here. We do have some high bulk shear levels with this today here. Oh, I was meant to be looking at this. Sorry. So we do have some pretty high bulk shear levels, but it does seem to be these storms will initiate before the bulk shear levels mainly initiate into these areas. But there are some low level shear in these regions, as that is definitely some bulk shear here. There is definitely a lot of areas of some low level wind shear with this to support tornadic activity here. Let's look at storm relative helicity values here. I meant to do 0 to 1 kilometer. Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out here. So if you do look at storm relative helicity values, there are a lot of helicity in these areas and low level wind shear helicity values here. So there is quite a bit of helicity values, especially this region right here does have a very high threat for some helicity values. In my opinion, if I would put the highest tornado threat, I would kind of put it in this basically region right here. But anywhere in this region could have a threat for big tornadoes with this today. There also is some very high helicity values up here. Man, that is some high helicity values here. And over here, there's also a lot of high helicity, and even over here, too, there's quite a bit of helicity values to support these storms. Look at how high that helicity gets by this time. There's some very high helicity. I do think there could be some tornadic supercells producing tornadoes in this region, and down here, there could be some also tornadic supercells producing tornadoes here. If we do look at the supercell composite here, surface-based supercell composite, there is a ton of supercells that have the threat to form here in this region. I mean, by this time, look how much energy you had to support supercells in these regions. This is some very high supercell composite here. This is going up to 21s in these regions, so there could be some very high supercell values, especially in this region too. And up here, there's a lot of areas to support these supercells. And by this point, it does start to very weaken out and does turn linear. But there still is some of it up here, as I do think there is some tornado potential of a big supercell right down here, and more up here, and down in this region. I think we'll have the potential for the biggest supercells with this here. If we do take a look at the significant tornado parameter here, we're also going to take a look at some soundings with this. We do have some potential of a big supercell that could be very tornadic in this region. Let's take a look at the soundings here. This is a tornado soundings, just a tor. It's not very curved here, but there is a little bit of curvature in these areas, but there's not the best photographs there. Oh, let's look at this. This is a PDS tor sounding here. Let's take a look at this. It's a little flatter, but there still is some curvature with this there. If we also look, let's look down here. Meant to look right in this region here. It is curving a little bit. It is definitely curving right here, but it's not the best curvature I've seen, but this is a curvature sounding here. And there is a lot of significant tornado parameter, especially down in this region, has a lot of it. Down here, I do think there could be a potential for significant tornadoes, also in this region too. Could have some significant tornadoes here. There's a lot of it up here. Look at how much significant tornado parameter there is up there, and also a lot of it over here. And over in that region here, there is a lot of significant tornado parameter. Let's look at the sounding right here. Oh man, oh my god, that is a very bad sounding. This is very, very curved here. This is not flat at all. This is a very bad sounding here. That is a very curvature. I don't know why that isn't PDS tor sounding here. I mean, look at that amount of significant tornado parameter there is in that area. That could easily produce a tornado here Let's also look at some up here. There's also some of it's a little flatter, but there is some of it down here. But the best I've probably looked at was probably around this area right here. Here in this region I'm probably seeing the best of it. But there also is a lot of it around that point. This could be a big supercell producing a lot of tornadoes in that region. Now let's look at surface-based CAPE photographs here. So around this time, there's a lot of surface-based CAPE in these regions. I mean, look how much CAPE there is right here. This is a lot of convective available potential energy to support storms here. And look, this is a very, very curved sounding. This is probably the best sounding we're seeing right now in these regions. But all these little soundings right here do have some curvatures with this. But this one right here, I'm really seeing the worst of right here in southern Wisconsin. I am seeing the worst curvature here. But there is a lot of potential for tornadoes in these regions here today. So, this is probably going to conclude this video today. I do hope you guys did like this video. This was a longer type of video here. I really hope you guys liked this video, and bye guys.